Hello there, and welcome to the second episode of Let's Talk About American History. The Europeans have now arrived in North America, marking the beginning, for better or worse, of a new era of American history. In this episode, we'll follow the Puritans, who have just set up the first New England colonies. But besides the funny hats they wore, what do we know about these people? What did they believe, and why? Perhaps most importantly, what do we have in common with them? As you probably remember from our last video, writing can tell us a lot about a culture, about their beliefs, their values, and their discoveries, but the Mayans and their descendants weren't the only ones writing in the Americas. The most revealing writing about American colonial thought didn't come from John Smith or William Bradford in their tales of harsh winters, heroism, and sudden assaults of the savage, but instead from Anne Bradstreet, the first truly American poet. Bradstreet was born in the early 1600s to a well-born family of Northamptonshire, England. She grew up surrounded by the more radical people of the era, by learned scholars, musicians, writers, artists, and nonconformist ministers. She married Simon Bradstreet at 16 years old, and was quickly whisked away with him to the New World. It was there where she would live out the rest of her life, writing, raising children, raising grandchildren, and burying them and writing their eulogies. While Bradstreets poetry does not outline harrowing adventures, nor precisely detail the mundane chores of pilgrim life, her portrayal of her lifelong struggle between flesh and spirit displays the relevancy of Puritan ideas in respect to the ideological struggles of modern people. The flesh is a symbol of the concrete world, the world of possessions, of wealth, and of the body. To the Puritans, all of this was worthless, dreadful simply because it was material, no match for the spirit. The spirit is the representation of the world of God, a world of pure, shining energy and light that's perfection was beyond comprehension. The glittering majesty of the world beyond made everything in the corporeal world pale in comparison. The Puritan view was that all the actions in one's life in the flesh should be centered around entering into the world of the spirit after death. They also believed in predestination. All events are laid out by God, and they all have their reasons. It is ridiculous to lament bad things that happen in life, for one's rewards in the afterlife infinitely outweigh any concerns of the carnal world. Upon coming to New England, Bradstreet remarked, "I found a new world and new manners, at which my heart rose. But after I was convinced it was the way of God, I submitted to it and joined the church at Boston." This change of heart, rising and submitting, is echoed in her poetry. This shift is caused by the war inside of Bradstreet's mind, between the flesh and the spirit. In the poem Upon the Burning of Our House, Bradstreet addresses the Puritan values of predestination and flesh versus spirit. She describes how her house burned down, but it was all okay because they were not her own things. It was not her own house, but that of God. As she put it, her hope and treasure lies above. This seems like a perfectly pure Christian poem, except for the fact that she drenches the whole piece in mournful longing for what she has lost. By creating a graven tone that consumes much of the poem, only to be counteracted in the last couple of moments, Anne Bradstreet casts doubt upon the idea that the only value lies in the spirit. Even though she says, "And when I could no longer look, I blessed his name that gave and took, that laid my goods now in the dust. Yeah, so it was, and so 'twas just." She continues with, "My pleasant things in ashes lie, and them behold no more shall I. Under thy roof no guest shall sit, nor at thy table eat a bit. No pleasant tale shall e'er be told, nor things recounted done of old. No candle e'er shall shine in thee, nor bridegroom's voice e'er heard shall be. In silence ever shall thou lie. Adieu, adieu, all's vanity." Vanity. Bradstreet uses the mood of the poem to portray some of the advantages of the flesh, the little things in life like company, camaraderie, and family, painting a more detailed picture of her inner conflict. But this conflict doesn't have to remain subtextual. In her poem, The Flesh and the Spirit, she masterfully utilizes the debate form to contextualize this struggle without being condemned by the Puritan society around her. Flesh's argument is that the lures of the spirit rest entirely on what is unknown. Flesh says, "Doth contemplation feed thee so, regardlessly to let earth go? Can speculation satisfy notion without reality? Dost dream of things beyond the moon, and dost thou hope to dwell there soon?" Spirit defends herself by saying that the riches and beauty she experiences in the world beyond are outside of flesh's comprehension. She has no need for the trash which earth doth hold. But mainly, Bradstreets Debate rests upon her uncertainty about her religion. If the world that the Spirit and Puritan teachings suggest is real, then of course our focus should be on achieving such a heavenly state. But as the flesh points out, is there any real way to know if this is true outside of faith? These are the exact sorts of questions that fueled Bradstreet, particularly at the end of her life. But this battle inside of her, flesh versus spirit, was not without consequences, as evidenced by her last poem entitled A Weary Pilgrim. She compares her state after a lifetime of internal struggle to a worn-down, calloused, and wounded traveler waiting for the release of death. A weary pilgrim, now at rest, hugs with delight his silent nest, blesses himself to think upon his dangers past and travels done. A pilgrim I on earth perplexed, with sins, with cares, and sorrows vexed, by age and pains brought to decay, and my clay house mouldering away. Oh, how I long to be at rest, and soar on high among the blessed. Puritans were people just like us, though their strong belief in predestination and the perfect world of heaven seemed disconnected from our world. Anne Bradstreet's poetry shows us how similar their questions were to ours. How much value should material objects have, and are we vain if we desire them? What happens after death, and is it possible to know? Well, for now at least, Anne Bradstreet knows better than I do the answer to that final question. Who wins the battle of spirit versus flesh in the end? Did you like this video? If you did, consider subscribing to Let's Talk About.